No one saw this coming. The Supreme Court, in a stunning 9-0 decision, just changed everything for American gun owners. What they ruled today could alter the future of your rights, your freedom, and how our laws are enforced from coast to coast. For years, gun owners and lawmakers have been locked in a constant tug-of-war over the meaning of the Second Amendment. But this morning's unanimous decision just redrew the line completely. It's rare to see all 9 justices agree on anything, and when they do, it means something big is about to shift. People everywhere are asking the same question: what exactly does this ruling mean for us? Does it expand the right to own and carry, or does it tighten federal control in a way no one expected? The truth is more complicated and far more important than the headlines suggest. If you care about your constitutional rights, stay tuned, because we're breaking down what the court decided, how it happened, and what this moment means for every gun owner in the United States. And if you want to keep up with every major update like this one, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss the facts behind the headlines. In a stunning turn of events that has sent shockwaves through the nation, the Supreme Court has delivered a unanimous 9-0 decision that fundamentally alters the landscape of gun rights in America. This isn't just another legal ruling, it's a constitutional earthquake that every gun owner, Second Amendment advocate, and American citizen needs to understand. Today, we're breaking down exactly what this landmark decision means for your rights, your firearms, and the future of gun ownership in the United States. What happens when all 9 justices of the Supreme Court, spanning the entire political spectrum, agree on something? You know it's monumental. That's exactly what we witnessed in this groundbreaking case that has left legal experts, gun rights organizations, and millions of Americans trying to process the full implications of this unanimous decision. The Supreme Court's 9-0 ruling represents something we rarely see in today's deeply divided America: complete judicial consensus on a matter that touches one of our most fundamental constitutional rights. This isn't a split decision with dissenting opinions or narrow interpretations. Every single justice, from the most conservative to the most liberal members of the bench, stood together on this issue, and that unity speaks volumes about the constitutional principles at stake. To understand why this ruling is so significant, we need to look at what led to this moment. For years, gun owners across America have faced an increasingly complex patchwork of federal, state, and local regulations. Some of these laws have been challenged on constitutional grounds, with gun rights advocates arguing that certain restrictions violate the Second Amendment's protection of the right to keep and bear arms. Meanwhile, other voices have pushed for more regulations in the name of public safety. This tension has created a legal landscape that's been anything but clear. The case that reached the Supreme Court brought these fundamental questions into sharp focus. At its core, the legal battle centered on whether certain regulatory frameworks and enforcement mechanisms being used against gun owners were constitutional. The petitioners argued that their Second Amendment rights were being infringed in ways that the framers of the Constitution never intended, and that modern interpretations had strayed too far from the original constitutional protections. What made this case particularly compelling to the justices was how it touched on not just gun rights, but broader questions about constitutional interpretation, federalism, and the limits of government power. The court had to grapple with how historical traditions of firearm regulation interact with contemporary concerns, and how to balance individual rights with legitimate government interests in public safety. The oral arguments presented to the court were intense and thorough. Both sides brought their strongest constitutional scholars and most compelling arguments. The justices asked penetrating questions that revealed they were taking this matter with the utmost seriousness. They examined historical texts, founding-era documents, and precedents going back to the earliest days of the Republic. Every angle was scrutinized, every implication considered. When the decision finally came down, the legal community was stunned by its unanimity. The court's opinion, while acknowledging the complexity of modern gun regulation, drew a clear constitutional line. The justices determined that certain approaches to restricting gun ownership had indeed overstepped constitutional bounds. They emphasized that while reasonable regulations have always been part of America's tradition, The specific methods being challenged in this case crossed into territory that the Second Amendment simply doesn't permit. The majority opinion, joined by all 9 justices, walked through the historical foundation of the Second Amendment with meticulous care. The justices examined what the right to keep and bear arms meant to the founding generation, how it was understood and applied through different eras of American history, and what limitations have traditionally been considered acceptable. They found that the challenged regulations couldn't be squared with this historical understanding. What's particularly significant is how the court framed its reasoning. Rather than simply declaring certain laws unconstitutional, the decision provides a framework that will guide how gun regulations are evaluated going forward. This means the implications extend far beyond the specific case at hand. Lower courts across the country will now have to reconsider existing regulations through this new lens, and legislators will need to ensure future gun laws comply with the standards set by this unanimous decision. For gun owners, this ruling represents a major vindication of rights they've long argued were being unjustly curtailed. The decision reinforces that the Second Amendment isn't a second-class right subject to whatever restrictions governments might want to impose. Instead, it stands on equal footing with other constitutional protections, and any limitations must meet rigorous constitutional standards. The practical effects of this ruling are already beginning to ripple through the legal system. Cases that were pending in lower courts are being reconsidered in light of the Supreme Court's guidance. State attorneys general are reviewing their gun laws to ensure compliance. Law enforcement agencies are adjusting their enforcement protocols. And gun rights organizations are preparing to challenge regulations that may no longer pass constitutional muster under this new standard. One of the most important aspects of this decision is what it says about due process and how gun rights intersections with other constitutional protections. The court made clear that procedural safeguards matter greatly when fundamental rights are at stake. Gun owners can't have their rights taken away through arbitrary processes or overly broad regulatory schemes that don't provide adequate protections against government overreach. This ruling also has implications for how we think about federalism and the balance between state and federal authority. While states have traditionally had significant latitude to regulate firearms within their borders, this decision clarifies that state power isn't unlimited. Constitutional rights place boundaries on what states can do, and those boundaries must be respected regardless of local policy preferences. The gun rights community is celebrating this decision as one of the most significant victories in modern Second Amendment jurisprudence. Organizations that have spent years fighting these legal battles see vindication in the court's unanimous recognition of the constitutional principles they've championed. For many gun owners who felt their rights were being gradually eroded, this ruling provides reassurance that the Constitution still means what it says. At the same time, the decision has sparked intense debate about what comes next. While gun rights advocates are energized, those who favor stronger gun regulations are grappling with what this means for their policy goals. Some argue that there's still room for sensible regulations within the framework the court has established. Others worry that this decision will make it harder to address gun violence through legislative means. What everyone can agree on is that this unanimous ruling carries enormous weight. When the Supreme Court speaks with one voice on a constitutional matter, it sends an unmistakable message to all other branches of government and to the American people. The Constitution means something definite, and courts have a duty to enforce it even when doing so may be politically controversial. The decision also highlights how the composition of the Supreme Court matters. Despite the different judicial philosophies represented on the bench, all 9 justices found common ground in the constitutional text, history, and tradition. This suggests that when constitutional principles are clear enough, even justices who might disagree on many other issues can reach consensus. Looking ahead, this ruling will shape gun rights litigation for generations to come. It provides a roadmap for how courts should analyze Second Amendment challenges, what questions they should ask, and what standards they should apply. Every future gun case will have to contend with the principles laid out in this unanimous decision. This unanimous Supreme Court ruling represents a watershed moment in American constitutional law. It clarifies principles that had become muddied, vindicates rights that many felt were being marginalized, and establishes standards that will guide the nation for years to come. Whether you're a gun owner directly affected by these issues or simply an American who cares about constitutional rights, this decision demands your attention and understanding. If you found this breakdown helpful and want to stay informed about major legal developments affecting your rights, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We're committed to bringing you clear, comprehensive analysis of the most important constitutional issues facing our nation. Ring that notification bell so you never miss an update, and drop a comment below letting us know your thoughts on this historic ruling. This is a conversation every American should be part of, and we want to hear your perspective.